Gilgo Beach murders may never be solved.
The officer located a body.
It seemed to be wrapped in burlap, which didn't make any sense. The crime scene gets expanded. I'm called, and Chief, we found another set of remains. They find another one, and another one. We were dealing with a serial killer.
No prison bars, no life sentence, no justice. These terrifying killers slipped through the cracks and vanished into the crowd. They didn't just murder, they terrorized, leaving behind trails of fear, confusion, and unanswered questions.
I just didn't know anything about this. I pretty much was doing things in my own little world.
Amazingly, all the times that I should have been caught, I never was.
Do you think that maybe Satan was involved?
Some confessed, others never did. But what's more terrifying than their crimes is the fact that they're still out there. Who are these monsters that justice never caught or couldn't hold on to? Join us as we unveil these serial killers who are free right now. Little Rock Slasher. For nearly a year, a deadly wave of violence swept through Little Rock, Arkansas, with a single, elusive suspect believed to be behind the random stabbings that terrorized the city.
It's terrible. I'm really concerned.
Kind of make you scared to move, go out of your own house.
A chilling series of stabbings unfolded over 9 months, and local police believe they're all linked to a single suspect.
Stabbings happened over a 9-month period, and police tell us it's all connected to one man.
Authorities are on high alert, suspecting that an active serial killer is prowling the streets. A figure who has earned a few ominous nicknames, including the River City Ripper and the Little Rock Slasher. Between August 2020 and April 2021, the city experienced a disturbing wave of violence, with 4 individuals randomly attacked while walking alone at night. Tragically, 3 of those victims lost their lives, while the 4th managed to survive her ordeal.
Somebody knows him, somebody's seen him, and we just need folks to call in and talk about it.
She provided police with a description of her assailant, describing him as a tall, young, and slender black man. In response to these horrific events, the Little Rock Police Department has put a $20,000 reward on the table for any information leading to the capture of this elusive suspect. Despite the ongoing investigation and the substantial reward, there have been no significant breakthroughs in the case so far.
There is a $20,000 reward offered by the Little Rock Police Department that leads to an arrest.
The community remains on edge, hoping for answers and justice as the search for the Little Rock Slasher continues. The Finland Slayer. A man's obsession with bikes led to a killing spree that spanned decades, with multiple murders, countless prison escapes, and a justice system that continued to give him chances. Born and raised in Finland, his path of violence began early and escalated quickly. His first known murder happened when he was just 22 years old, and the motive? A bicycle. He brutally killed an entire family, a husband, a wife, and their young son, just to get his hands on a bike. That shocking act set the tone for what would become a long and violent criminal history. Over the years, this man has been in and out of prison more times than anyone can count. Every time he was released, it wasn't long before he ended up behind bars again, usually for something serious. Auto theft, assault, parole violations, and disturbingly, more murders. He never seemed to go straight for long, always falling back into a pattern of chaos and crime. As if that wasn't bad enough, he's also proven to be incredibly slippery. Over the past 2 decades, he's managed to escape from prison 5 times. 5. That's not just a fluke. That's someone who knows how to manipulate the system and slip through the cracks. Despite this repeated pattern of violence, defiance, and escape, the justice system continued to give him chances. And here's where it gets truly baffling. Despite his violent past and extensive criminal record, authorities decided to significantly reduce his sentence. They cut it down to just 10 months. 10 months for a man with a body count and a proven history of reoffending. Based on that timeline, he's likely walking free right now. So if you live in Finland, or even nearby in Sweden, and you happen to be a proud bicycle owner, you might want to start thinking about an alternative mode of transportation. because it looks like Stabby McStabberson, as some have mockingly dubbed him, is back out in the world. And if his history tells us anything, it's that he has a dangerous fixation and a serious issue with keeping his hands off other people's bikes or lives. The Predator of Huarez. With over 500 women killed in Ciudad Juarez, the possibility of a single serial killer responsible for nearly a third of these deaths raises a chilling thought.
Police say so far this month, 11 women have been killed in Juarez.
The unit that investigates crimes against women across our border is releasing some new numbers.
Originating from Mexico, this unidentified killer is linked to an astonishing 165 murders. Since 1993, over 500 women have been found dead in Ciudad Juarez, which has earned a notorious reputation as one of the deadliest cities in the world. What's even more unsettling is that a significant portion of these killings, around a third, are so strikingly similar that they are believed to be the work of a single, elusive killer. This raises two unsettling possibilities. Either there's a whole group of murderers operating in the area, or there's one highly skilled individual who's managed to evade capture by expertly covering his tracks. Either way, it might be a good idea to think twice before planning that family vacation to Mexico. The Monster of the Andes. The horrors of over 350 murders committed by this Colombian killer are made even worse by the fact that he was released from prison early. Born in Colombia, this infamous murderer became known for the staggering number of young girls he brutally killed. Between 1969 and 1980, he is believed to have murdered over 350 girls, 110 in Ecuador, and another 240 in Peru and Colombia. But perhaps the most chilling part of his story isn't just the horrific scale of his crimes, but the slap on the wrist he received for them. You see, Ecuador doesn't have a death penalty, and the maximum prison sentence there is only 20 years. So, in 1999, this killer was released from prison after serving just a fraction of time, less than 3 weeks for each of his victims. And, like many others on this list, he didn't seem to learn from his past. In fact, he's currently wanted by Interpol for a murder he's suspected of committing back in 2002, meaning he's been roaming free for over a decade. Long Island serial killer. This twisted individual, still unidentified, is believed to be the person behind a chilling string of murders, somewhere between 10 and 14 women, all linked to the trade dating back to 1996. What makes this killer even more terrifying is the way he disposes of his victims. He's known for leaving their bodies along Ocean Parkway, a long stretch on Long Island, New York. It's like he's got a signature move for dumping his victims. But here's where things take a darker, even more eerie turn. There's a disturbing theory floating around that this killer might have some connection to law enforcement. Why? Because of his uncanny knowledge of police procedures. He seems to know exactly how to cover his tracks, almost as if he's learned the ropes from the inside. So, could this be a real-life Dexter? The thought that there's someone out there who might be working in the shadows, with all the skills of a cop and the darkness of a killer? That's downright unsettling. It's like the police are supposed to serve and protect, and maybe, just maybe, chop you up into little pieces along the way, just like something out of a horror movie. Metal Fang. Over the course of his reign of terror, Metal Fang consumed the flesh of up to 100 women, and after being labeled insane. Originating from Kazakhstan, this sociopathic individual earned the chilling nickname Metal Fang due to his distinctive white metal teeth, which he infamously used to consume the flesh of the 50 to 100 women he is believed to have murdered. Astonishingly, he was never held accountable for his heinous acts, as he was diagnosed with insanity and schizophrenia. For the past 3 decades, he has been shuffled in and out of mental health institutions. The last reports indicated that he was deemed cured and has since been released back into society. This decision has raised eyebrows, particularly among some of his former doctors, who express concerns that he may never truly overcome his cannibalistic urges. Now that he is a free man and has never been found legally responsible for his horrific crimes, he can travel anywhere in the world. This means he could potentially be lurking in any location, even in the most unexpected places, like your attic. Charles Cullen. Some people get to know their coworkers so well, they become almost like family. That was definitely the case for Amy Lovren and her fellow nurse, Charles Cullen. Or at least, that's what Lovren thought. Back in 2003, everything changed when the authorities reached out to Lovren for help in catching Cullen. They suspected him of killing hospital patients, most likely by poisoning them with a called digoxin. At first, Lovren was in complete shock, but she agreed to assist law enforcement in their investigation. She wore a wire, hoping to get Cullen to admit to his crimes. He didn't exactly confess outright, but he said just enough to have him arrested. 3 years later, Cullen was convicted of killing 29 people, though it was suspected that the number could be as high as 400. He was sentenced to 18 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole and is now serving his time in New Jersey State Prison. 16 years after Cullen's conviction, Lovren was consulted on a movie called The Good Nurse, which tells the story of Cullen's killing spree and Lovren's role in helping authorities catch him. In a memorable scene, Lovren confronts Cullen, stating that they knew he had killed Kelly Anderson and Annie Martinez, and that there were likely more victims. In an interview with Glamour, Lovren shared that she initially didn't want to be involved in the whole situation because she didn't want to be associated with a serial killer story. However, over time, she changed her perspective. She explained that at first, she didn't want her name connected to the case because she didn't want others to think she was trying to profit from the story of a serial killer. Eventually, she realized that participating would give her a platform to explain herself and offer a voice to others who had loved individuals with dark tendencies or serious mental health issues that led to tragic actions. Gary Ridgway. Gary Ridgway, infamous as the Green River Killer, stands as one of America's most notorious serial killers. His killing spree began in the early 80s, with authorities suspecting him as early as 1982. However, it wasn't until 2001 that Ridgway was finally arrested. Like many serial killers before him, Ridgway managed to escape the death penalty, striking a deal with prosecutors to lead them to the remains of several victims that had yet to be discovered. This cooperation was enough to ensure he was spared execution. In the end, Ridgway was convicted of 49 counts of aggravated first-degree murder and sentenced to 48 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole. Despite the sentence, many members of the public, particularly the victims' families, had hoped for a much harsher punishment. One of the voices of anger in the aftermath of the trial expressed that they considered him a waste to society and a waste of space, adding that if they could ask for one thing, it would be for him to be killed. Though he was locked away, Ridgway's name would resurface in news headlines over the years. In 2020, a controversial legislative move by the Washington State Supreme Court came to light, which would have allowed thousands of prisoners, including Ridgway, to be released early to combat prison overcrowding and the spread of COVID. The idea caused an uproar, but ultimately, Ridgway was not granted early release, and he remains incarcerated at the Washington State Penitentiary. Then, in December of 2023, another chapter in Ridgway's gruesome legacy emerged. A set of long unidentified remains, once known only as Bones 17, was finally linked to a 15-year-old girl named Lori Ann Razpotnik.
This was 15-year-old Lori Ann Razpotnik. We now know she was killed by Gary Ridgway,
who had disappeared back in 1982. A few weeks later, another set of remains, previously identified as Bones 20, was confirmed to be Tammy Lyles, a 16-year-old from Seattle who had been missing since 1983. These discoveries only added to the chilling reality of Ridgway's vast and horrific impact on the lives of his victims and their families. The Karachi child killer. Over 190 children have gone missing in Karachi, fueling fears that the child killer is active again, while authorities continue their desperate search for the elusive murderer. The Karachi child killer is an unidentified murderer from Pakistan who specifically targets children. Between 2012 and 2013, more than 15 children went missing, only to be found later, brutally. However, the situation has escalated recently. At the start of this year, there was a dramatic spike in child abductions in the city of Karachi, with over 190 cases being reported. The rise in these crimes has become so alarming that police have issued warnings to parents, advising them to keep their children within sight at all times, especially after dark. While the gravity of this situation is deeply disturbing and no joking matter, one can't help but wonder if the Pakistani authorities put as much energy into tracking down this killer as telemarketers put into calling us. They might make some progress. Paul Bernardo. Ever wonder how a couple could go from sharing sweet nothings to committing unspeakable horrors? The saga of Paul Bernardo and Karla Homolka is a jaw-dropping tale that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Paul Bernardo is a name that still haunts many to this day. He first made headlines in the late 80s when he became infamously known as the Scarborough Rapist. Between 1987 and 1990, he was connected to a series of sexual assaults that left the community terrified and on high. Although the police had their suspicions, he somehow managed to evade arrest and avoid charges during that time. But things took a dark turn between 1990 and 1992 when he teamed up with his then-wife, Karla Homolka. Together, they embarked on a horrifying spree of and murders that would shock the world and earn them the infamous nickname the Ken and Barbie Killers. One of their victims was tragically Karla's own younger sister, Tammy. It wasn't until 1993 that the authorities finally caught up with them. The trial that followed was nothing short of sensational. It wasn't just the heinous nature of their crimes that had everyone talking. It was also the shocking plea deal Karla struck with the prosecutors. In exchange for testifying against Paul, she got a manslaughter charge and a mere 12 years in prison. The media dubbed it the deal with the devil, and it stirred up a storm of outrage. Meanwhile, Paul faced the music for multiple charges, including 2 counts of first-degree murder, and was sentenced to life in prison, with a chance for parole in 25 years. Many people were calling for the ultimate punishment, with comments like, "Public hanging, string him up," and "should get rid of him, kill him." The anger was palpable. Initially, Paul was locked up at Kingston Penitentiary, but over the next 2 decades, he became a high-profile target and faced assaults from other inmates. Records later revealed that he was never the aggressor in these situations, but that didn't change the fact that he was a notorious figure behind bars. Fast forward to 2023, and news broke that he was being transferred to a medium-security facility. This sparked outrage across Canada, with government representatives from all levels condemning the move. Ann Kelly, a spokesperson for the Correctional Service, had to step in and clarify, saying, "The fact that he is at a medium-security institution does not negate the fact that he is a psychopath, and that he committed horrific and unspeakable crimes. The punishment is the sentence, and he was given the harshest sentence possible in the Canadian justice system. As for his chances of getting out early, he was denied parole in both 2018 and 2021, much to the relief of many who still remember the terror he unleashed." The saga of Paul Bernardo and Karla Homolka remains a haunting chapter in Canadian criminal history, a reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface. Randall Woodfield. What started as minor criminal offenses in his youth soon spiraled into a reign of terror, as Randall Woodfield became one of the most feared serial killers in the Pacific Northwest. Randall Woodfield's descent into darkness can be traced back to his high school years in Oregon. It was then that his first arrest took place for indecent exposure, a troubling start to a life that would spiral further out of control. Even though his criminal record was wiped clean after graduation, it didn't stop him from repeating the same behavior during his college years. He was arrested multiple times for the same offense, yet somehow he managed to continue his college journey. During this time, he played as a wide receiver for the Portland State Vikings and even took part in a campus Bible group, which seemed to contrast sharply with his criminal tendencies. But after college, things began to take a darker turn. With only a few semesters left before graduation, Woodfield decided to drop out of school, and that's when the real trouble began. In 1974, he was drafted by the Green Bay Packers, giving him a shot at a professional football career. However, his dreams were quickly shattered as he was cut from the team before ever stepping onto the field. This marked the beginning of a new chapter in his life, one where petty crimes would evolve into something far more sinister, and where he would eventually earn a reputation that would become infamous. In 1975, Woodfield found himself in trouble again, this time for robbery. He was arrested and sentenced to 10 years in prison. However, in a twist of fate, he served only 4 years before being granted parole. Unfortunately, this early release allowed him to spiral deeper into a world of violence and crime. After being freed, he went on to commit a series of heinous crimes, including multiple robberies and assaults. His reign of terror along the I-5 highway earned him the notorious title of the I-5 Killer. It wasn't until March of 1981 that he was finally caught and brought to justice. Woodfield's trial came soon after, in June of the same year, where he was convicted of multiple murder charges. He was sentenced to life in prison, plus 90 additional years. But as more details of his crimes came to light, his sentence grew longer, with even more time added on for additional charges. Despite the overwhelming evidence against him, Woodfield has never confessed to any of the murders he was charged with, leaving his true motivations shrouded in mystery. Today, Randall Woodfield is serving his life sentence at the Oregon State Penitentiary, and it's unlikely he'll ever see the light of day again. Given the nature of his crimes and the fact that he was once mistakenly released on parole, the chances of him ever being granted another chance at freedom seem slim, if not impossible. The Doodler. Nearly 5 decades after the first victim was found, the police released an updated age progression sketch of the elusive Doodler serial killer, hoping to uncover new leads in a cold case. Detectives in San Francisco released an updated age progression sketch of the mysterious Doodler serial killer, hoping it will spark new leads in a case that's been cold for nearly 5 decades. The release of the sketch marks the anniversary of the first known Doodler homicide, which occurred 49 years ago. Over the next year, 5 more victims would be discovered, all murdered in the Ocean Beach and Golden Gate Park areas between 1974 and 1975. The killer earned the nickname the Doodler after a surviving victim described him as a cartoonist who doodled during their late-night dinner. This particular victim met the suspect in July of 1975 at the Truck Stop Diner, located near Market and Church Streets, after the bars closed. The suspect was said to have been sketching animal figures on a napkin, and he told the victim he was an art student studying to be a cartoonist. The victim's description led to the first forensic sketch of the suspect, which was released in 1975. In 2019, the police released the first age progression sketch based on that initial information. The renewed effort has come as part of the ongoing investigation into the case, which has remained unsolved for so long. Police say 2 separate attacks occurred in the same month in 1975 at the Fox Plaza Apartments, where both victims lived on the same floor but didn't know each other. These attacks were later connected to other murders in or near Ocean Beach. After the initial composite sketch was released, police received a tip from a woman who called them twice within 10 days, providing a name and a vehicle plate number for the suspect. The SFPD is now hoping this woman comes forward again, along with at least 2 other individuals who also identified the same suspect back in the day. In January of 1976, police interviewed the man named by these callers. He was considered a strong suspect at the time and, according to detectives, remains the focal point of the investigation. All the Doodler's victims were men, and it's believed they were gay. This has led to speculation that some of the surviving victims might have been reluctant to come forward at the time for fear of exposing their or their encounters with men. We believe there are other individuals who may have survived attacks by this same suspect or might have information about the suspect and the attacks, said the SFPD. In light of the new sketch and renewed investigation, the SFPD has upped the reward for information leading to the identification, apprehension, and conviction of the suspect. The reward has gone from $200,000 to $250,000 after it was already doubled from $100,000 just last year. Detectives are hopeful that with the added incentive and fresh details, someone will come forward and help bring this cold case to a close. Sammy Gravano. Once the feared right-hand man of John Gotti, Sammy Gravano is now a 72-year-old man trying to start anew after serving time for a conviction, but his violent past continues to haunt him. Sammy the Bull Gravano, once John Gotti's right-hand man and underboss, made his way out of an Arizona prison this month after nearly 20 years behind bars for a conviction. This came after Gravano, now 72, had confessed to 19 murders, all while serving time for dealing ecstasy, a crime he committed after leaving the Federal Witness Protection Program. Gravano, born and raised in Brooklyn, had been living a quieter life after flipping on Gotti and the Mafia back in the early 90s. But even after serving his time, he's still under parole for the rest of his life, and chances are he'll continue to live in hiding. It's a far cry from when he first faced the law as a Mafia kingpin. Back then, after agreeing to testify against Gotti and a bunch of other top mobsters, he struck a deal with the feds. Only 5 years in prison for his involvement in multiple murders and the Gambino family's other illegal activities. Gravano had been part of the infamous Gambino family crackdown during the late 80s and early 90s, alongside Gotti. The two were a deadly duo. Gravano was Gotti's muscle, a ruthless enforcer with a mind for business. But in a shocking turn of events, Gravano turned on his boss. He flipped in 1991 after overhearing Gotti trash-talking him on a government wiretap inside their hangout spot, the Ravenite Social Club in Little Italy. That moment changed everything for Gravano. Instead of ending up in prison for life like Gotti, he walked away with a 5-year sentence for his role in numerous murders and mafia operations. As for Gravano's rise, it was as brutal as it was fast. He once confessed that seeing The Godfather as a young man inspired him to join the mob. Though he only made it through 8th grade, he managed to make millions in New York City's construction rackets, a classic mafia hustle. He was also one of the masterminds behind the murder of Big Paul Castellano in December 1985, a hit that changed the course of mafia history. He was right by Gotti's side when they plotted and carried out the assassination at Sparks Steakhouse. Afterward, the pair even drove past the scene to see the carnage. The heat was on after that hit. Gravano and Gotti were arrested and tried for the murder, but it was Gravano who flipped first, taking the stand against his former friends, including Gotti and the Gambino family consigliere, Frankie Lux Locascio. They were both convicted. Gravano went on to testify in dozens of cases, helping put away over 3 dozen mafia figures, including rival bosses like Vincent the Chin Gigante from the Genovese family and Little Vic Orina from the Colombo family. It was a big deal, and Gravano was all too happy to boast about it. He even told Diane Sawyer in a high-profile interview that he was a hero for helping take down the mafia. He also made sure everyone knew that he was keeping millions in dirty money from his old mob days, money that was supposedly part of his plea deal. But the good times didn't last. After relocating to Arizona, under a new identity and with a little help from plastic surgery, Gravano thought he could start fresh. That is, until he got caught up in a massive operation. In 2000, he and his son were arrested for running a multi-million-dollar ecstasy ring. The case against him was built largely on the testimony of informants, and in 2001, both Gravano and his son pled guilty. Now, after serving his time, the bull is back, though it's safe to say his days of running the streets are behind him. He's a far cry from the feared mafia boss he once was, but still a figure with a past that will never fully let him go. Charles Sobraj. The release of Charles Sobraj, the bikini who once terrified the hippie trail from a Nepalese prison, has shocked the world, as the notorious serial granted freedom despite his violent past. Known for his crimes in the 1970s and 80s, Sobraj's reputation has followed him everywhere. His associates once called him a con artist, a manipulator, a thief, and, of course, a murderer. Sobraj earned the nickname the Bikini Killer in Thailand, and was also dubbed the Serpent for his talent in slipping past the law using clever disguises and trickery. At 78, he's believed to be behind the deaths of over 20 Western backpackers traveling along Asia's hippie trail in the 1970s and 80s. Born in Saigon on April 6, 1944, to a Vietnamese mother and an Indian father, his life took a dark turn from an early age. His mother remarried a Frenchman, and soon after, Sobraj started down a criminal path that would take him all over the world. By 1963, he was already deep into a life of crime, hopping between Greece, Turkey, Iran, Pakistan, and Afghanistan. In 1970, he ended up in India, where he was caught after a jewelry heist, but he managed to flee while out on bail. After briefly being arrested in Greece, he escaped again, this time heading to Bangkok in 1975 with his Canadian girlfriend and an Indian accomplice. He soon began mingling with tourists, pretending to be a precious stone trader. But in October of that year, the body of a young woman was found on a Pattaya beach, wearing only a bikini. The killing soon escalated, with victims beaten, strangled, or burned alive. Sobraj, who would later be known as the Bikini reportedly used the victims' passports to fund trips tied to his precious stone and trade. His reign of terror didn't end there. In 1976, he was arrested in India after trying to more than 20 French tourists at a New Delhi hotel. He was also connected to the murder of another French tourist, Luc Salomon, who died in a Mumbai hotel from poisoning. By May 1982, he was sentenced to life for the 1976 of an Israeli tourist, Alan Jacob. But after an appeal, he was acquitted the following year due to lack of evidence, though he remained in prison for other charges. In late 1985, India agreed to extradite him to Thailand for murders of a Turkish tourist and an American woman, Teresa Knowlton, for which he faced the death penalty. Sobraj wasn't done with escaping, though. In March 1986, he pulled off a daring escape from a New Delhi prison by the guards with sweets laced with sleeping pills. But he was caught just days later in Goa at a restaurant, where a statue of him in his iconic peaked cap still stands to this day. Despite the legal delays in India, his alleged crimes were starting to fade from the radar. By the time he left prison in 1997, the statute of limitations on his crimes in Thailand had expired, and he was free to go. After spending some time quietly in France, he returned to Nepal in 2003, using a fake identity to run a shawl export business. But it didn't take long for him to be recognized and arrested for the 1975 murders of two tourists, Canadian Laurent Armand Carriere and American Connie Jo Bronzich. He was sent to a high-security prison in Kathmandu. In 2004, he was handed a life sentence in Nepal, and he ended up serving 19 years of a 20-year sentence. During his time in prison, he even married a much younger Nepali woman, Nihita Biswas, in 2008. Then, in December 2022, Nepal's top court ruled to release him on health grounds. He was set free on December 23rd, and while it was expected that he would return to France, the man known as the Serpent had already proven time and time again that he's never far from the spotlight. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.